You ever hear about a moment that didn't just shake a locker room but cracked the foundation of an entire franchise? It didn't come out of a headline, or a scandal, or even a camera-catching sideline meltdown. It started in the smallest, most quiet way you can imagine. A room full of grown men, frozen in silence, as one person calmly stood up and changed everything. What happened next wasn't just a trade demand, it was a shift in power. One sentence turned Cleveland's season upside down and revealed what no press conference ever could. The Browns were never in control, not of their quarterback, not of their locker room, not even of themselves. Because while they were busy trying to play damage control behind closed doors, the story had already leaked, and the rest of the league was watching. What they saw wasn't just dysfunction, it was exposure. From the outside, it looked like a rising rookie throwing a tantrum. But from the inside, it was something much deeper. A slow, brutal collapse that had been building for months, maybe even years. And it all started with Shedeur standing up in a meeting that was supposed to be about film study, and instead lit the fuse on a full-blown organizational implosion. But what really happened? What pushed him to that moment? And why does this story matter far beyond Cleveland? Stick around, because once you understand the chaos that followed, you'll realize this wasn't a quarterback gone rogue. This was a quarterback making a statement. And the Browns? They were the ones who never saw it coming. It was supposed to be just another routine Wednesday. Mid-season grind, offensive meeting, film study, the kind of quiet, repetitive rhythm that every NFL player knows by heart. But something about the energy in the Browns facility that morning felt off. The air was heavier. Players weren't cracking jokes. Even the click of cleats against the tile floors sounded more deliberate, like everyone could feel something was coming, but no one wanted to say it out loud. Then, it happened. Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. According to multiple inside sources, Shedeur stood up calmly, confidently, and said 10 words that changed everything. Trade me, or deal with the fallout. Nobody moved. No one spoke. In a room full of professionals, most of them built like controlled chaos on the field, there was suddenly complete, unnerving silence. The only sound was the faint buzz of the projector, still frozen on a paused downfield route that no one would be breaking down anymore. Not today. And it didn't stop there. Shadur didn't scream. He didn't slam his helmet or punch a wall. That would have been easier to digest. This wasn't rage, it was resolve, with coaches staring blankly back at him, players trying to look busy, and assistants nervously glancing around the room. Sanders explained plainly that the offense wasn't working, that the trust between quarterback and coaching staff was gone, and that if something didn't dramatically change, he wanted out, period. Now here's where it all truly broke. Instead of responding like a leader, instead of taking the temperature of the room and addressing the problem head-on, head coach Kevin Stefanski snapped. Witnesses say it wasn't physical, but it was explosive in all the wrong ways. His tone rose almost instantly, his words garbled with frustration. What started as a rebuttal spiraled into something unrecognizable, a coach unraveling in front of his players. He didn't push back with strategy. He didn't push forward with command. He just lost it. And then he walked out. In that instant, something shifted in the locker room forever. The door shut behind Stefanski like the final slam of a judge's gavel, and the man who was supposed to lead them had just stormed out on the one person this franchise was supposed to be built around. And that silence? It didn't come back right away. Some players buried their eyes in the floor. A few stared straight ahead, pretending none of it just happened. Someone no one knows who murmured a phrase that instantly felt like prophecy. It's over. And they were right, because what broke that morning wasn't just a coach's temper, it was Cleveland's illusion of control. Within hours, phones were buzzing, agents were being called, rumors started leaking, fast and uncontrollable. What happened behind closed doors was already spilling out into the league. But this was just the spark. The fire was still coming. Before the trade demand rocked Cleveland, before the meeting erupted, before Kevin Stefanski stormed out and the headlines wrote themselves, this had been building quietly for months. Because chaos like this, it doesn't happen overnight. It brews, slowly, silently. Behind press conferences, behind sound bites, behind staged Instagram posts, and handshakes that don't mean anything anymore. When Cleveland drafted Shedeur Sanders, they didn't just get a quarterback, they got a vision, a leader who'd been praised for his poise just as much as his arm strength. A player who came in buttoned up, polished, media-trained, and iron-willed. In a league full of raw potential and untested hype, Shadur stood out because he knew who he was. And more importantly, he knew what he needed. From day one, he was told this franchise would build around him, that the offense would be tailored to his tempo, fast reads, spread concepts, motion-heavy, a modern game plan for a modern quarterback. The Browns even mirrored that promise in their draft picks, press releases, and off-season interviews. It felt, for a moment, like they got it. But then the season started, and the vision disappeared. The playbook? Rigid. Old school. Built for a quarterback the Browns didn't even have anymore. Every creative suggestion Sanders brought to the table was met with polite nods and then silence. Communication started to strain. Each week, the same failed concepts were called again and again. And every time he raised his hand to suggest an adjustment, he wasn't just ignored, he was dismissed. At first, Shadur did what rookies are trained to do. Sit down, nod, trust the process. Keep your head down and prove it with your play. And he tried. He stayed late, studied harder, checked all the boxes, but patience can't fix dysfunction. Especially not when the people above you are more interested in defending their system than evolving with their talent. Insiders say by week 5, things behind the scenes started shifting. Shadur stopped initiating film conversations, stopped asking questions he knew wouldn't be answered. Conversations with coaches turned into professional silence, short phrases, cold glances, tension that lived in every hallway. It wasn't open hostility. Not yet. It was something worse, apathy. Because trust doesn't implode in one dramatic moment, it rots slowly in the background. The Browns told Shadur they wanted a partnership. What they showed him was a dictatorship. One where feedback wasn't welcomed, it was seen as rebellion. And that's when the fracture started to form. Not just between quarterback and coach, between player and system. A system that preached process while ignoring progress. A team that sold hope but delivered roadblocks. So when Shadur finally spoke up in that meeting room, it wasn't ego. It wasn't rage. It was resignation. He realized something that day, something devastating. The Browns didn't want a quarterback. They wanted a robot. And he wasn't built to follow broken orders. The promises had all unraveled. And now, so was the season. There's a moment in every disaster quiet, barely noticeable at first when things stop being tense and start falling apart. In Cleveland, that moment had a face, and it wasn't the quarterback. It was the head coach. Kevin Stefanski was supposed to be the steady hand, the no-drama, detail-obsessed play caller who turned chaos into structure. He'd survived multiple front office shifts, quarterback swaps, and the revolving door that is the Cleveland Browns coaching graveyard. If anyone was going to keep this young team glued together, it was him. At least, that's what everyone thought. But when Shedeur Sanders dropped his now infamous ultimatum, calm, direct, no theatrics, it wasn't a shot at Stefanski's authority. It wasn't even personal. It was a last resort. A final attempt to be heard in a building where suggestions had turned into background noise. And Stefanski? He didn't just take it personally, he took it as a threat. Witnesses described what happened next, not like a confrontation, but like an internal detonation. The usually composed, cool-tempered coach broke. His voice raised, his words stumbled. Emotion poured out in real time. Anger, humiliation, frustration, all of it, boiling over in front of the very people he was supposed to lead. Stefanski didn't argue the X's and O's. He didn't dispute the points or ask for clarity. He snapped, and then he left. Stormed out of the room in front of his staff, his players, and most importantly, the quarterback this franchise was supposedly built around. And just like that, the illusion shattered. Whatever control he had, vanished. Because in the NFL, leadership isn't about scheme, it's about presence. And when that presence walks out the door under pressure, it's over. You don't recover from that. For a few long seconds after Stefanski's exit, no one said a word. Offensive assistants sat frozen. Players glanced around, unsure if this was real. Then someone quietly voiced what the entire room was thinking. That's it, we're done. And they were. Because the moment a head coach loses emotional control in front of a young, impressionable locker room, he doesn't just lose the moment. He loses the room. Permanently. From there, the cracks spread fast. Players started texting agents. Conversations flooded Twitter before the Browns' PR team even knew what happened. The narrative couldn't be bottled, spun, or delayed. It took on a life of its own. Sports networks ran with it, fan forums exploded. And for the first time that season, Cleveland wasn't trending for highlights. They were trending for collapse. But the heart of this story wasn't just the coach walking out. It was why it happened. And what came next would prove one thing beyond any doubt. When pressure hits Cleveland, leadership doesn't rise. It runs. Some stories stay inside the building. This wasn't one of them. Within just a few hours of Kevin Stefanski's emotional walkout and Shadur Sanders' trade ultimatum, the Browns facility transformed from a tense environment into full-blown crisis mode. Phones buzzed non-stop. Players whispered in hallways. Staffers kept their heads down, not because of what had happened, but because of what was coming. The leak. And not just to one reporter. This was full-scale exposure. Multiple insiders, conflicting accounts, headlines clashing across every major sports network like waves crashing into the same broken ship. The official story hadn't even been drafted yet, but the unofficial one had already gone viral. Shadur Sanders challenges coaching staff. Kevin Stefanski storms out of team meeting. Browns locker room fractures as rookie QB drops trade demand. For a franchise that prided itself on message discipline, it was a complete breakdown. The Browns had no spokesperson, no angle, no control. Their quarterback had fired a shot, and instead of responding carefully, their head coach had handed the media its headline. And in today's NFL, that's all you need. By sundown, the internet had picked its sides. Twitter threads dissected every word. Analysts compared it to Baker Mayfield, to Deshaun Watson, to Manziel. It didn't matter that the situations were wildly different. Perception doesn't care about nuance. It just spreads. The locker room split immediately. Some players, mostly younger ones, quietly backed Sanders. They were tired of rigid schemes, tone-deaf adjustments, and leadership that spoke at them, not with them. Others stayed quiet not because they disagreed, but because they didn't want to be the next name leaked. But silence in a locker room? That's worse than noise. Silence means no one's sure who's in charge anymore. Inside the Browns front office, the mood was described by one source as chaotic panic in a suit. Emergency meetings went into the night. PR teams rewrote 3 different versions of a public statement, then scrapped all of them. Executives debated whether to defend the quarterback, the coach, or neither. They couldn't agree. They were already late. Because by then, the public had already drawn its conclusion. Cleveland wasn't just falling apart. It had no idea how to stop it. Meanwhile, rival teams were watching with interest, not horror interest. Which QB-needy organizations might pick up the phone? Who would have the guts to take advantage of Cleveland's implosion? Across the league, decision-makers didn't see scandal. They saw opportunity. A star rookie quarterback, young, talented, disrespected, and available, that doesn't create a scandal. It creates a market. But for Cleveland, this wasn't just about losing leverage. It was about losing the room, losing the locker room, losing the message, losing the very trust it took years to build, and one meeting to destroy. And the thing about losing trust, you never lose it quietly. As chaos swallowed Cleveland, the rest of the league didn't pause. It pounced. The moment word leaked that Shadur Sanders had issued a trade ultimatum before the Browns even released a statement, front offices were already picking up the phone, not to offer sympathy. To get a head start, Denver, Las Vegas, Atlanta, phone calls, texts, back-channel communication. In a league where true quarterback talent is rare and a marketable one is nearly priceless, Shadur's sudden availability wasn't treated as controversy, it was treated as opportunity. And Cleveland, still scrambling to manage optics, was the last to realize it. The vultures had already started circling. To outside teams, this wasn't a PR headache. This was a potential franchise reset. Sanders wasn't some moody rookie with thin skin. He was seen, especially by younger player-led front offices, as exactly the kind of quarterback the modern game was shifting toward: poised, digital, native, confident, aware. A leader who didn't just know how to win locker rooms, but headlines, cameras, and brands. This wasn't just about throwing touchdowns. It was about influence. Shedeur had millions of followers, a sharp media presence, and command of every room he entered. That doesn't just drive team chemistry, it drives revenue, media coverage, fan interest, jersey sales. The league had been creeping toward the era of player control for years. With this one story, it had officially arrived. And Cleveland? They were being forced to play catch-up in a game they didn't even know had started. Insiders say the Broncos were the first to quietly reach out. They'd seen years of post-Manning instability and were desperate for a reboot. The Raiders, always drawn to big names and narratives, saw Shedeur as everything they wanted: flash, leadership, charisma. Atlanta? A young, athletic team missing only a quarterback and a leader. They didn't just see a fit, they saw a face of the franchise. Meanwhile, back in Berea, the Browns organization stood frozen, caught between denial and damage control. Reports suggest the front office considered the leaks overhyped, that things could still be repaired. But each passing hour told a different story. Social media flooded with trade scenarios. Talk shows debated blame. Rumors of offers started hitting reporters' inboxes before Cleveland could even decide on a direction. They weren't controlling the story anymore. They were reacting to it. And worst of all, the leverage was already gone. Because when a quarterback says publicly or even through a leaked source that he wants out, every GM in the league smells exactly what this is: a fire sale waiting to happen. And it's not just about contract value anymore. It's about something far deeper, something more dangerous for the Browns' reputation. Shadur wasn't just a rising player. He was a rising standard. He didn't just expose a power imbalance inside Cleveland. He exposed a blueprint for everyone else to follow. And now, while Cleveland tries to patch its sinking ship, other teams are already planning how to turn Shadur Sanders into their future. Because in the NFL, when a good quarterback makes noise, teams hesitate. But when a great one shows he's ready to lead, they move fast. If this whole story feels familiar, that's because it is. Different faces, different quarterbacks, different headlines, but the same broken script playing out again and again. For fans in Cleveland, this isn't shocking anymore. It's expected. Promising draft pick, emotional press conference, a few flashes of brilliance, then everything cracks under the weight of mismanagement, misplaced egos, and outdated thinking. It's not just failure, it's identity. Look backward and the pattern is obvious. Baker Mayfield was once the guy, passionate, fiery, a former #1 pick who brought swagger to a desperate city. But the system never adapted to him. The front office flipped. The culture collapsed. He was gone. Before that, Johnny Manziel. Before him, Brady Quinn, Brandon Weeden, Colt McCoy. Names that came in with hope and left with headlines, and not the good kind. Each one came in with excitement, each left with blame. And somehow, the franchise always stayed the same. Now enters Shedeur Sanders, polished, composed, connected, a leader with the media IQ of a 10-year vet and the hunger of someone who knows what's on the line. He wasn't looking for drama. He wasn't chasing some selfish narrative. He came to Cleveland expecting one thing: partnership. And instead, he got silence, stiff systems, dismissed feedback, a game plan that refused to evolve with the player it was supposed to showcase. Just like the others, but this time louder, bigger, and impossible to hide. And that's what stings even for people outside this organization. Because this time, it really didn't have to go this way. Shadur wasn't a gamble. He was the blueprint. A high IQ passer who studied defenses like a coach, lived in the film room, and carried himself like someone with something to prove and something to protect. He was media savvy, brand aware, socially relevant, everything an NFL franchise in 2025 claims to want in a quarterback. But when it came time to actually support that player, Cleveland didn't step up. They froze. Because that's the real identity of this team. It's not just dysfunction, it's denial. They don't adapt, they double down. They don't build culture, they sell it until the cracks show. It's a loop. One, the fans are tired of watching, the players are tired of playing in, and now, for the first time, the entire league is tuned in to watch backfire in real time. Cleveland has built decades of tradition off of slogans, resets, and heartbreaking almosts. But slogans don't win games. Hype doesn't build loyalty. And culture doesn't come from nostalgia, it comes from action. And when you can't deliver that, players notice. Veterans talk. Agents warn others. The next wave of talent learns what not to trust. Because you can only start over so many times before people stop believing you were ever building anything in the first place. And right now, that's where the Browns stand. not at a crossroads, at a mirror. And what they see looking back isn't Shedeur Sanders walking away, it's every mistake they swore they'd never repeat, repeating itself. This isn't just about Cleveland anymore. What started as a locker room implosion is now echoing across franchises, front offices, and player group chats league-wide, because this moment, this storyline with Shedeur Sanders, it's not just personal, it's generational. And it's exposing a divide between the old NFL and the one players are building in real time. 10 years ago, a rookie quarterback demanding a trade would have been buried instantly. The story would have been spun as immaturity, ego, or inexperience. The front office would have crushed the narrative by feeding the media a story about development or private resolution. But this isn't that NFL anymore. Players now control platforms. They shape narratives. They don't have to wait for ESPN to clear a segment. They are the segment. They're their own brands, their own megaphones, their own movements. And they're done waiting for outdated systems to catch up. Shedeur Sanders just proved that you don't need 10 seasons, a Pro Bowl, or a legacy jacket to demand respect. The game has changed, so has the power. And while some coaches and GMs get that the smart ones who evolve with their talent, others, like Cleveland, are still clinging to a structure that simply doesn't work anymore. Dictate, control, silence, repeat. That might have flown in 2005. But in 2025, it's an extinction-level mindset. Because players talk now, they share, they warn each other. And what Shadur just exposed in Cleveland wasn't just a leadership breakdown, it was a reality check. If this is how the Browns treat their most valuable rookie in years, what would they do to anyone else? And that question? It travels. College prospects hear it. Veteran free agents factor it in. Coaches coming up the pipeline take notes. Even reporters, ones who used to cover politics, economics, and trends, are writing about this saga. Not as a football story, but a workplace culture crisis. Because that's what it's becoming. The teams that win now aren't just the ones with elite schemes or flashy signings. It's the franchises with connection, with communication, with systems built on collaboration and the emotional intelligence to evolve with their talent, not tower over it. You think Patrick Mahomes wins without Andy Reid listening? You think Lamar Jackson stayed in Baltimore just for the money? Players stay where they feel heard. They leave when they feel ignored. And right now, every agent in the NFL is watching how the Browns handle this. Because their decision won't just impact one season, it'll impact how they're perceived for the next 10. Shadur may have lit the spark, but the fire? It's spreading. This isn't about who wins the trade. It's about who wins the trust. Because that is the new currency of the league. Now, it comes down to this: a decision, one moment, one move. And whichever path Cleveland chooses next will define not just this season, not just Shedeur Sanders' future, but the identity of the franchise for years to come. 2 doors, and neither of them easy. Door 1, accountability, honesty, growth, a hard reset, starting from the top. Cleveland admits the system failed. Leadership changes. Kevin Stefanski is let go. The offense is rebuilt around the quarterback, not out of desperation, but out of recognition that this player isn't the problem, he's the blueprint. And if the Browns truly want to evolve for the first time in decades, they hand him the keys, not just the blame. It means tough conversations, culture shifts, empowering people the system usually silences. But it also means something rare for Cleveland: change with purpose. Door 2, denial, spin, control, the familiar road, issue a statement watering everything down. Blame the headlines, defend the leadership, quietly shop Shadur around while claiming he's still part of the future. Fans have seen this play before, so has the rest of the league. The quarterback gets labeled as difficult, the coach survives another season. The team issues a vague promise to move forward, and before long, the narrative resets around another rookie whose name will probably end up on the same list as all the others. But here's the harsh truth. If they choose that second door, they don't just lose their quarterback, they lose everything. Because Shadur walking out of Cleveland isn't just an exit, it's a message. A warning to every player watching. Even the most talented, prepared, camera-ready rookie in years couldn't survive that building. The next QB might be smarter, or louder, or tougher, but he won't forget this happened. And neither will the agents, or the media, Or rival GMs who now smell blood every time Cleveland promises stability yet can't back it up. Because when you fail a player this publicly, you don't just lose talent, you lose reputation. And in today's NFL, reputation is everything. The Browns spent decades convincing themselves they were cursed. They weren't cursed. They were clinging to ghosts, old-school thinking, outdated systems, fragile leadership wrapped up in fancy slogans. You can't fix that with a new draft class, or a fiery speech, or a rebrand. You fix that by tearing down what's broken and admitting it isn't working anymore. Cleveland has that chance. Right now. Today. But time is running out. Because one way or another, this ends. Either with a bold leap into the modern era, or with another jersey burned, another star shown the door, another next year already lost before the offseason even begins. The Browns are at the edge. Again. And this time, the story isn't just theirs alone. Because the NFL is watching. The future is watching. And the league no longer waits for the past to catch up.